Today, on part 9 of Courtside's 10-part 2019 NFL preview, I'm giving you all of my playoff predictions for both the AFC and NFC. I'll tell you who's in, who's out, and who's going to Miami to play in Super Bowl 54. So sit back, relax, and take a seat. Courtside. Hello there and welcome to episode 34 of Courtside. I am your host, Andrew Cohen. Today is part 9 of Courtside's 10-part 2019 NFL preview. If you missed any of the first 8 parts of this preview, I would highly suggest you go back and check those episodes out. And if you have been enjoying all of the content here on Courtside as of late, I would really appreciate it if you went ahead and subscribed to the podcast no matter where you might be listening. Also, please go ahead and follow the podcast on Twitter. The handle is @thecourtsidepod. The link to the Twitter page will be in the description. Now, today I'm doing something a little bit different than what I've been doing thus far in the preview. In each of the first 8 episodes, I talked about a specific division, talked about all 4 teams in that division, gave you storylines and players to watch, gave you a projected record. Today, however, I'm going to talk about both conferences and predict how the playoffs will pan out game by game in each conference. And then at the very end of the episode, I'll give you my Super Bowl 54 winner. And now let's get started with the AFC. So after going through and predicting every single game in the 2019 NFL season, predicting every single team's record, here are my final AFC playoff standings. First place, we have the New England Patriots, who I have finishing 14-2. Number 2, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars at 12-4. 3, I have the Chiefs also at 12-4. The reason the Jaguars will finish in second over the Chiefs is because I have the Jaguars beating the Chiefs in Week 1. I think it's going to be a tough matchup in Week 1. Fourth place, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers at 10-6. Fifth, I have the Chargers at 11-5. And at 6th place, I have the Tennessee Titans at 10-6. Now let's start with Wild Card Weekend. First matchup, the number 6 seed Titans at the 3 seed Kansas City Chiefs. This is the matchup I have. Now, I have the Titans finishing at 10-6 because I think they're going to ultimately get good enough quarterback play to get that many wins, regardless of whether it's Mariota being the starter the entire year, or if Tannehill gets some starts due to injuries to Mariota or just due to poor play from Mariota. I'm not sure how much I can trust either of those guys to start a playoff game, though. Now, I will say this. In 2017, Marcus Mariota went into Kansas City on Wild Card Weekend and did come out with the win. So Mariota actually has proven he can win a game in the playoffs, especially an important game on the road. However, that Chiefs team was a 10-6 team, went on a 4-game losing streak in the middle of the season, was led by a very average quarterback in Alex Smith. This year's Chiefs team is exponentially better. Just basically, across the board on offense, they're better. Defensively, probably a little bit weaker, but still it's a much better team. Now, to the Titans' credit, they are the type of team that actually matches up well with the Chiefs. They have a good running game with Derrick Henry, who can handle a huge workload. They have a strong defense, right? And the best way to beat the Chiefs is to keep that offense off the field for as long as possible. And the Titans will be able to do that because they control the clock with Derrick Henry on offense. But if the game is close in the fourth quarter, it very well could be in this matchup. It does not bode well for the Titans. I just trust Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs to get it done more than I can trust the Titans. And that's why I have the Chiefs beating the Titans in the wild card round and advancing to the divisional round of the AFC playoffs. Next matchup here on wild card weekend for the AFC, the 5 seed Los Angeles Chargers going up against the 4 seed Pittsburgh Steelers. I think these teams are somewhat similar, just a little bit, right? They both have a veteran quarterback. It's been with the team for years and years. They have some good receivers. They have a strong defense that features a really good pass rush. But there are 3 key differences between these teams that I think are really going to determine the outcome of this game. Number 1, something that benefits the Chargers is that I think the Chargers have a better secondary with guys like Casey Hayward, Desmond King, and they'll be better especially if Derwin James gets back in time for this game and if he's back to his self from last year. But something that is going to greatly benefit the Steelers is that the Chargers' offensive line is pretty weak. At left tackle, they have a 2018 undrafted rookie who had one career start. He started last year, 1 game. That's not going to cut it against the Steelers' pass rush. I just think the Steelers' pass rush will have a field day against this offensive line in a big game in Pittsburgh in the playoffs. Third difference, it's really the quarterbacks, and it's just Big Ben in a big home playoff game. I trust him more in that game than I trust Phillip Rivers on the road in the playoffs. Additionally, Mike Tomlin has a lot more playoff experience than Anthony Lynn. And at the end of the day, I have the Steelers winning at home and advancing to the divisional round. Now let's move on to the AFC divisional round. 4 seed Steelers at 1 seed New England Patriots. Here's something interesting. The Steelers defeated the Patriots last year in Pittsburgh. Pivotal Week 15 matchup. But before that, the last time Big Ben defeated the Patriots was also in Pittsburgh in 2011. It took him 7 years to beat Tom Brady again. That's how much the Patriots have had the Steelers' number over the past decade. Additionally, Big Ben, 1-4 in his career in New England, including a loss in the playoffs to the Patriots in 2016. In the AFC Championship, sent the Patriots to the Super Bowl. The one win that Ben Roethlisberger has in New England came in 2008 while Matt Castle was the starting quarterback because Tom Brady had a torn ACL. What makes you think that this time around it's going to be any different? Right? Big playoff game, Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, and you've never beaten them in New England before with Tom Brady on the field. I don't see anything changing. The Patriots have been to 8 straight AFC championships. Their roster is just simply better, I think, across the board than the Steelers. And again, I can't see Big Ben going into New England and winning a big playoff game against Tom Brady. So I am taking the Patriots to advance to their 9th straight AFC title game. Second matchup here in the divisional round in the AFC, I have the Chiefs going up against the Jaguars in Jacksonville. Now, I mentioned when I gave my final AFC playoff standings, I mentioned that I had the Jaguars winning Week 1. I still believe that. But in an AFC divisional round game, things will be much different than just a Week 1 matchup. I mentioned this with the Titans, right? The Jaguars, similar to the Titans, they have a good running game. They can play tough on defense. They'll be able to control the clock and keep the Chiefs' offense off the field as much as possible. That bodes well for the Jaguars. And because they're built to play that way, the Jaguars were able to make it to the AFC Championship game 2 years ago with Blake Bortles. So you would assume with Nick Foles, a guy with big game experience, Super Bowl ring, guy that's simply just better than Bortles, you would assume they'd have better chances, right? The defense is still really strong. They did lose some key pieces like Telvin Smith. I think that's a huge loss personally. And they also lost safeties Barry Church and Deshaun Gibson. But the defense is still going to be strong enough, although you do wonder in the secondary, 2 of your starting safeties gone, how is that going to affect you against the Chiefs' high-flying offense? Now, the Jaguars team, I do think it's better this year than it was 2 years ago, but I have a hard time believing it's going to be enough to beat the Chiefs. You just look at the quarterback and coaching staff, right? Nick Foles, really good track record in the playoffs. He still isn't as good as Mahomes, though. Mahomes has proven he can win a playoff game. He almost took that team to the Super Bowl last year, right? But when it comes to coaching, Andy Reid has significantly more experience in big games than Doug Marrone. And in the playoffs, he's had years and years and years of experience. Doug Marrone has basically had one a couple years ago with the Jaguars. So I'm taking the Chiefs to move on to the AFC Championship. So now the AFC Championship is set for me. 3 seed Chiefs at number 1 seed Patriots. I think this one's fairly simple, actually. I think this is a simple matchup to choose. These 2 teams faced off in the AFC Championship game last year. It was in Kansas City. I think both teams have gotten better since last year, right? The Chiefs added some pieces on defense that would hopefully make it a little bit better. The Patriots added some depth at receiver, some depth on defense, right? So both teams are overall better teams. But now this game, whereas it was in Kansas City last year, it's in New England this year. Andy Reid is 0-3 in his career against Belichick in the playoffs. And you're telling me that's going to change in New England? I'm sorry, I just don't see it. So I have the Patriots heading back to the Super Bowl for the 3rd straight year. All right, now it is time for the NFC playoff picture. Here's how I have the NFC standings panning out after predicting every game in 2019. Number 1 seed, Chicago Bears. I have them at 13-3. Number 2 seed, I have the Los Angeles Rams at 12-4. Number 3, I have the Falcons at 11-5. 4, I have the Cowboys also at 11-5. 5, I have the Saints also at 11-5. And 6, I have the Eagles also at 11-5. That's just the way it panned out. Quick notes. The Cowboys and the Falcons both won the divisions. The reason the Falcons finished third and the Cowboys finished fourth is because of my projected record against the NFC, which would be the tiebreaker scenario here, which would make the Falcons be third and Cowboys fourth. And with the Saints and Eagles, the two wildcard teams, having the same record, the reason I have the Eagles finishing sixth is because I think they're going to have a lower record than the Saints against common opponents. With that out of the way, let's get into the wild card round. First matchup, number 6 Eagles, number 3 Falcons. Now, the Eagles finishing at 11-5 is dependent on the health of Carson Wentz. I think that goes without saying. Right, but it also comes with Wentz needs to return to at least close to what he was in 2017 when he took the league by storm, almost won MVP. And even though I have the Eagles finishing in 6th place here, right, you have to keep in mind they're a tiebreaker away from getting the 5th seed. They're also a tiebreaker away from winning the NFC East. And if they won the NFC East, they would be a tiebreaker away. In this case, it would be just a single matchup against the Falcons away from getting the 3rd seed. So I don't think there's really nothing at all separating the Eagles and Falcons in terms. I mean, the record's the same. I think talent-wise, they're pretty similar. They're both very good teams. I have both teams coming into this game winning 6 of their last 7. So both teams will be riding a hot streak. Both teams have a really good quarterback. I think the Eagles have the better coach. But to me, when I look at the overall roster, I like the Eagles more. Right? Here's what Atlanta has that's better. They have a better number 1 receiver, a better number 1 running back, but Philly has arguably more depth at those 2 positions. Right? Philly has like four good serviceable running backs. At receiver, they have Alshon Jeffrey, Nelson Aguilar, Deshaun Jackson, and also their tight ends are Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert, who are both really good tight ends, better than what the Falcons have. Philly is also better on the O-line. They have a better defensive line, more depth in the secondary. I like the Eagles roster. I just think the Eagles roster is better built for a playoff run. If the Falcons suffer a major injury in the middle of the season, right? Last year, Deion Jones, Keanu Neal, Ricardo Allen, you take those hits in terms of injuries, the Falcons don't have as many guys that can step up and fill that spot. Whereas with the Eagles, outside of quarterback, they have a ton of depth across the board at every position. And ultimately, I have the Eagles defeating the Falcons in this wild card matchup. Second matchup here on wild card weekend in the NFC, I have the number 5 Saints at the number 4 Cowboys. Here's something really interesting that I didn't realize until today when I was making this episode. Besides his rookie year in 2004, when Drew Brees played for the Chargers, Drew Brees has won the first game of every single playoff run he's ever been a part of. He's never lost the first game. Every single first game he plays in the playoffs, he wins when he's been in New Orleans. Right? Same holds true for Sean Payton because he's been the coach every single year. Drew Brees has been in New Orleans besides, I think, 2012 when he was suspended for the Bounty Gate scandal. I mean, I think for the Saints to lose in the first playoff game, they have to just be significantly outmatched by their opponent when it comes to coaching, quarterback, offensive playmakers, defense. Like, all of that has to be significantly better for the other side. Now, the Cowboys are really good. And Dak Prescott has played fairly well in all of his 3 career playoff games. And this game is in Dallas, too. You have to keep that in mind, right? The Cowboys have the home field advantage. But the game's played in a dome. So that benefits Drew Brees compared to playing outdoors in the cold weather. I think the Saints just have so much more experience. They're always winning the first game of every playoff run. So I have the Saints winning in Dallas and moving on to the NFC divisional round. Now let's move on to the divisional round with our first matchup. Number 6 Eagles at number 1 Chicago Bears. A rematch of last year's double doink wildcard game. Now Carson Wentz should be an upgrade over Nick Foles. But to be honest, Nick Foles actually played pretty well in Chicago last year. 266 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. You have to keep in mind it was like, I don't know, maybe 10 degrees. If at the high, it was very cold. Can Carson Wentz really play that much better in Chicago, in the cold elements of Chicago than Nick Foles did? I don't think so. I mean, statistically, I don't think there's going to be much of a difference. And keep this in mind. Last year, the Bears were a field goal away. They were a good bounce off the goalpost away from sending the Eagles home in the wildcard game. Trubisky played amazing down the stretch in that game, especially in the fourth quarter. On that final drive, he was nails. The defense held the Eagles to just 16 points. The only thing that went wrong was Cody Parkey's double doink. That's all it was. That's what changed that's what changed the outcome of that game. And even though the Eagles roster is very good all over, I think the Bears roster might be better at some spots, especially on the defensive side of the ball, which is in the end why I like the Bears heading to the NFC Championship game over the Eagles. Second matchup here in the NFC divisional round, I have the number 5 Saints at number 2 Rams. Something I mentioned when talking Saints at Cowboys was that even though the Cowboys had the home field advantage in my projections, it's not a huge home field advantage because they're playing in a dome, which is where Drew Brees thrives. The Rams don't play in a dome, but they play in Los Angeles, where in January it's going to have a high of somewhere in the 60-degree range at least. So Brees will be comfortable enough playing in that. Also, when I compare these two rosters, I like the Saints. I think they're better overall across the board. Brees is better than Goff. I would take Kamara and Latavius Murray over Todd Gurley and his injuries. The Rams have more depth at receiver, but Michael Thomas is better than anyone the Rams have at the position. Saints have a better O-line. The Rams have a better defensive line with guys like Aaron Donald, Michael Brockers, Dante Fowler. I like their safeties more, but I mean, the Saints just have a better roster in my mind. I think overall, you look at the makeup of the roster, I think the Saints have a better roster. There's also the obvious fact that the Saints would have defeated the Rams last year had the refs made the right call. And I think the Saints have improved heading into 2019 more so than the Rams. The only question with the Saints is, does Drew Brees take a step back at his age? But if he doesn't, then the Saints have a real shot at the Super Bowl, and I have them defeating the Rams in the NFC divisional round. Now for the NFC Championship. Saints at Bears. I've made a big deal about Drew Brees not having to play in a cold weather game against the Cowboys or the Rams. So, right, that benefits the Saints greatly. So it's only right that I consider it heavily in this matchup as well. In January in Chicago, the average high temperature is 32 degrees. We saw that last year when the Eagles and Bears played, right? It was freezing. I simply just cannot trust Drew Brees in that cold of a game personally. That also goes for the rest of the Saints roster. I mean, the coldest weather game they'll play all year is either at Tennessee week 16 or at Carolina week 17. I mean, I looked it up. The average low temperature for both those places is somewhere around 50 degrees at that time of year. In Chicago, the high will be 32. At least an 18-degree difference. At least, probably more. Probably in like the 30 range. So I think ultimately that's going to contribute to the downfall of the Saints in this game. And that is why I have the Chicago Bears advancing to Super Bowl 54. So in Super Bowl 54, I currently have the Chicago Bears facing off against the New England Patriots, a rematch of Super Bowl 20 back from 1986. And in that game, the Bears won, I think, 46-10. It was a complete blowout. I expect things to be different this time in my projection. Now, if you just simply look at the two rosters, right? The Patriots are better at quarterback. Tom Brady's obviously better than Trubisky. I think at running back, it's basically a wash. You have 4 great guys for the Patriots, 2 guys for the Bears, and as of now, on September 3rd, the Patriots running back group is significantly more proven and trustworthy, but I think David Montgomery could be a star for the Bears, and they also have Tariq Cohen as well, who I really like. Either way, the scales don't tip significantly at the running back position. Wide receiver, to me, I have to go Patriots. You have Edelman, one of the best receivers, one of the 2 best playoff receivers of all time. Throw him in there with Philip Dorsett, Josh Gordon, Demaryius Thomas, a couple of rookies, N'Keal Harry and Jacoby Myers, and they have a really solid receiving core. The Bears, they have a lot of potential. Allen Robinson coming back his second year after tearing his ACL, so you would assume he'll be stronger than last year. You have Anthony Miller, rookie last year, heading into his second year, and Taylor Gabriel, who's also heading into his second year with the Bears. So you would assume everybody's going to improve a little bit. But outside of them, I mean, there's nobody really that you can trust. I mean, Cordero Patterson, Riley Ridley, who I'm not sure how much run he's going to get. So I have to go with the Patriots for receiver. At tight end, the Bears starting tight end Trey Burton's been dealing with injury. I would assume he's healthy by the Super Bowl. So tight end goes to the Bears. O-line, I think it's pretty close, honestly. The Patriots, I would have said were better. But with losing David Andrews, I think it makes it a much closer competition, with the replacements that are going to be coming in for Andrews being very unproven. The defense is really tough. I think both of these defenses are potentially top 5 defenses. I mean, you look at the Patriots, just look at the front 7, and then we'll look at the secondary in a minute. But front 7, Patriots have Michael Bennett, Lawrence Guy, Danny Shelton, who's played really well in camp and preseason. They drafted Chase Winovich, who's going to play a lot, both at defensive end and on the defensive line. He'll also maybe even have a couple snaps at linebacker, right? At linebacker, they also have Donta Hightower, Kyle Van Noy. They brought back Jamie Collins. They drafted Jawan Bentley in 2018. He missed last year with an injury, but he impresses me every time he steps on the field. And then with the Bears, Akeem Hicks, Eddie Goldman, Khalil Mack, Roquan Smith, Danny Trevathan, Leonard Floyd. There's so much talent on both sides of the ball. On both sides on defense for both these teams. It's really impressive. The secondaries are both really good. Stephon Gilmore might be the best corner in the league. Devin McCourty and Patrick Chung have been doing their thing for years at safety. The Bears have Kyle Fuller and Prince Amukamara, who are both really good at corner. Eddie Jackson is an elite free safety. They brought in HaHa Clinton-Dix to replace Adrian Amos. That's a pretty good switch. I mean, you're still losing some talent, but not losing a lot. I mean, just defense. To me, this would be a defensive matchup. That's what both quarterbacks may have solid games, but it's going to be the defense getting stops, forcing punts. But ultimately, at the end of the day, with these two rosters being so close together in talent, I have to go with the experience of Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. Right? I like Trubisky a lot. I think he's going to have a good year. I really like Matt Nagy, the head coach for the Bears, and their defense is really good. But I just look at the Patriots, I say, they've been here before. Not just Tom Brady and Belichick, who've been here for almost 2 decades now, right? But the team last year won the Super Bowl. Everybody's pretty much coming back. They've added good, nice depth pieces. They're bringing back guys like Josh Gordon, who hopefully he can stay on the team for the entire year. I just think ultimately, at the end of the day, you have to give the edge to Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. And that's why I'm taking the Patriots to be the champions of Super Bowl 54, back-to-back Super Bowl champions. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this edition of Courtside, Part 9 of Courtside's 10-part 2019 NFL preview. Tomorrow, on the final part, Part 10 of this preview, I'm giving you my award predictions as well as a few bold predictions for the upcoming season. If you've been enjoying all of the content here on the podcast, please go ahead and subscribe no matter where you might be listening, and follow the podcast on Twitter. Link will be in the description. Signing off, this is Andrew Cohen. I'll see you next time.